today. Excited to have Monica Davis from the Learning Center. She's a new math learning specialist, replacing Jackie Stone.
Yes.
So this initiative is joint with, we're essentially under AWM. We're trying to get a few speakers in to talk about teaching practices, diversity, a lot of those sorts of topics, in addition to the standard math seminars we have. So, yeah, so welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie, and thank you all for having me. I am so excited to be here. I am an alum. I came to Phillips many, many years ago and suffered through the undergrad and the master's, so I know all about what a lot of my students are facing, and I'm sure for you, many of you are faculty full-time, and then some are graduate students. I'm assuming you have a mix of everybody?
Mostly grad.
Mostly grad.
So mostly grads here. Okay, I can't tell you all the distinguished. So, but I'm so glad to have everybody here, and so glad to speak with you. Very, very briefly, I will be timely. I chose this topic. This is something near and dear to me. In my 22 years of teaching, as a high school, a secondary math teacher, and a collegiate instructor, adjunct, part full-time in a few of those years. I've traveled around as a military wife, so I've done it different places, and one of the things that I know from those experiences is you better be able to adjust and be flexible to whatever your environment is as you move around, which means you need to be sensitive to the needs of any kind of student, all sorts. I've seen every student from every gamut, every end of the scope, in terms of I've had students with disabilities in collaborative settings. I've had students who are very high achieving, and your top students. I've had all sorts, and I enjoy every level. And part of that enjoyment comes from really just learning how to understand myself better and my own personal biases, everything about me helps me to better see my students. And I'll explain more about that. So that's why I put this title in here as Transforming Instruction by Creating an Inclusive Environment. It is transformative. A lot of the work that I've done around equity and inclusion, cultural sensitivity training, diversity, anti-bias, all kinds of things, no place for hate with the Anti-Defamation League, things that I have done have made me better, and in turn, I can be a better instructor for my students. So I'm hoping you will get some little nugget out of this and maybe be inspired to maybe challenge yourself to do more of this work and pursue some of your own research in this field. The agenda for today is pretty straightforward. I like to always open and model the way that I was trained and what I would recommend to you in trying to maintain a classroom environment that is open, that is inclusive, and in doing so, I always try to establish ground rules. I think that's important for any learning space, to have some ground rules. So we'll look at those in a second. We'll talk a little bit about what good college teaching looks like according to a couple of professionals in the field, and we'll talk about what you believe it looks like. And then this activity that says, what do I see when I look at you, is one of those very reflective activities. And again, I'll just ask that you keep an open mind. It's not deep or anything, but it is something that I think will be beneficial to you to kind of lay the foundation for everything that is to follow with the critical conscious self-reflection activity, brain model, classroom management, and then of course we'll close out. So, first the ground rules. And these are definitely up for discussion, modification. We can add, we can take things away, and that's how I like to open up a semester or a school year with my class and say, these are some basic ground rules that I think everybody kind of assumes, but there may be some more, because we never know what will come up in a classroom setting and what kind of things happen, right? We're in a great space. We have some high achieving students here at Carolina, but they still do come in with all sorts of backgrounds, and we make some assumptions that sometimes we gotta be careful doing. So I feel like it's great if we start off by saying we want to remain receptive, empathetic, sensitive, participative, Have that energy when you come in. Maintain a level of confidentiality, meaning there will be things that may be shared even in a classroom, and including a math classroom, that you may say, this is something that we need to keep in the family. So don't let this go out from here, especially whenever someone's being vulnerable about what they know, their knowledge, or sharing an experience or something. So that is an important part to me of building trust and maintaining transparency. So these are just some basic rules, and normally in these sessions, welcome, we are in a circle. We don't have that luxury of having a circle here, but we normally do use circles so that I'm not at the front and I'm speaking at you, or we're all in one sharing circle. So maybe in another time, another space, we'll have an opportunity to share that way. But this is something that I consider just basic ground rules. This is something that we all feel like we can respect and honor while we're in this setting today. Awesome. Is there anything you'd like to add to this list? Wonderful. I have additional statements here at the bottom because there will be some topics and some things I'll challenge you to think about. And so whenever you speak up, if you say, this is what I think, I always say let's use I statements, because we are speaking for ourselves and not generalizing for a population of people. If there's something like, oops, that wasn't really, I don't know about that one, just do an ouch. And immediately whoever says it, if you don't mind saying, oops, I'm so sorry. Because that's the reality. We're human beings, and sometimes we don't even know that what we said was offensive. We never would have thought about that. And again, that's part of this self-reflective process that we'll be talking about. If there's something that I say, would you mind sharing? And you say, I'll pass. No judgment. I respect that. You have every right to do that. And again, everything that I'm showing you here, I do this because I'm trying to model what I think makes for a very good instructor. Because I feel like these are some of the things that we as math educators and educators in general need to consider in our spaces, because we don't always do everything perfectly. But if our students see us as human beings and we're transparent and there's a level of trust established, those little ouches and oops, they're forgivable and we can move on. So that's our ground rules. All right. So I put this out there. You've already seen this if you read the email from Wesley. So this is pretty much what I base all of my presentation around. The Classroom of Difference was actually, I guess, a series of training exercises that we went through while I was in Georgia, an educator in Georgia, and the Anti-Defamation League actually sponsored it and trained us for months. I mean, it was a long process. And for our school district, I had volunteered to be on that team, and then we branched out and created our own for our district. So this was one of our overarching kind of, I guess, mantras, things, and I'll just let you look at that. But ultimately, our cultural competence does hold a great deal of potential to positively influence student learning. How well we understand our students and the relationships we build with our students, how effective we are in doing that is, I don't have research to support it, but I'm sure we could say the effectiveness of your instruction parallels that very much. It's your effectiveness as an educator, I feel like, rides on our ability to be culturally competent and sensitive to all of our students. And so this just kind of is a great way of kind of summarizing where I'm headed today. All right, so I've got a couple of clips. I'm hoping all of you can hear. Is it a speaker or something already connected? I'll just try it. If it doesn't, we'll go from there. Looks like the speakers are on. So this is a very short piece that comes from a professor, or a PhD. I'll let you see it. You'll see who he is and where he's from. It's a little dated. It's from 2014, but I thought he said some really good things in here. So, really short. Can you see that okay? Let me turn lights.
What is really good?
Uh-oh.
Actually, that's
Not as loud as bright.
what is the very best of college teaching? College teaching is undeniably, if you will, a performing art. It takes place in a performance setting. Whether the teachers are teaching acting or public speaking or not, it doesn't matter. Teachers need the skills of a performer, a speaker, the communication skills, the ability to use the voice, the ability to be sensitive to the setting, to movement, digestion. In effect, the skills of an actor or actress. But good teachers do a lot more than that. We get to look in students' eyes. We get to try to stimulate thinking. We get to respond to students. We get to provoke students talking to us. The college classroom is much more of an interactive setting for theater than any kind of traditional drama setting we're going to name. We're also trying to get students to think about ideas. And most importantly, we're trying to motivate them to work outside class to learn what are often difficult concepts and skills. I like to think a really good teacher stimulates intellectual excitement. Emotional arousal for sure, which is why I use the word excitement, but arousal around ideas, around the process of learning, the fun of learning. So that's one big dimension. Build and create intellectual excitement. A second dimension, which I think is equally important, is the interpersonal dimensions of teaching. As a clinical psychologist, this one comes pretty naturally to me. The belief that we have relationships with students that are very important to their work, to their motivation, to their desire to want to learn what we're trying to share, and the likelihood that we will have a fairly powerful, even transformative effect on them and their growth as people, from young adults to older adults. As a final point, I think you're also going to see this. Each of the faculty members that we've assembled for you in this program obviously cares about their teaching. They enjoy it, they enjoy students as people, and they delight in students learning their subjects. That's a third essential part of exemplary teaching, and that is dedication to it. Teaching is so much fun for people who really care about it. And I think that's also part of what leads them to be motivated to develop the skills that go into creating intellectual excitement and the kind of motivating interpersonal rapport that characterizes the best of college teaching.
So, reactions. What do you think? Do you agree with a lot of what he's saying about teaching and what good teaching or the best teaching looks like? What are your thoughts? Anything to share, add, or maybe even some criticisms?
I just think it's interesting that he opened up by talking about you have to be sort of like an actor, because I don't know that I've heard anyone else say that before. But it is sort of true. I mean, you need to be a little bit entertaining and use your voice in certain ways to
That's right.
attract attention, that sort of thing.
That's right. And I said this was dated because it is a few years, I guess, outdated, maybe 5, 6 years. We used to, in the profession, like to refer to ourselves as sages on the stage. And now we say, please do not consider that the case, because we want to be more facilitators of learning. We don't want to be on the stage performing. So that's why I was going to say, I'm so glad you brought it up, because that was one of my criticisms. Although we do a certain degree of, I guess, acting, because you are trying to, like you say, motivate, you're trying to engage. So sometimes it takes you coming outside of what your normal, embodiment is. You say, I'm going to do something different. Sometimes it is even uncomfortable for us, and acting can be that. It puts you on the spot. You feel like, oh wow, it's a level of anxiety we even get at the front of a group. And so to put that at ease, what I like to say is what he said, those last few comments were, enjoy what you're doing, and then it's not so intimidating or daunting, and it's not acting, because the students see it's genuine. You really care about what you're doing, and you care about them learning, because ultimately at the end of the day, it is not about us. It's just not about us. It's about the student, and it's about getting them where they need to be and meeting them where they are to do that. And that can be, that's very challenging. This is not something to be taken lightly. I tell people all the time, I know teachers and just education in general, I think, is criticized as a profession, as if it's something that anybody can do and it's not so challenging. But as academics, I know you know how challenging the content is just to understand, and then to communicate that to someone else so they understand it. Wow. Until someone does it, I don't think they have a real appreciation for teaching. But I'm glad that you recognize that, and that is something that I think is both partially true, but then we're trying to move away from that sage on the stage mentality. So great feedback. I always opened, and when I was in a high school setting, I always opened with a daily affirmation. And I brought this here with us, even though it's not something that I think this level of education maybe requires, or especially at this institution. But I would encourage you to have your own daily affirmation. So I brought this up because I have one. When I get up in the morning, I do some form of daily affirmation because I know I've got a lot that I'm going to face that day. And this is something that I kind of say to myself. And it says, I have to honor my biases before I can execute an effective strategy to teach through equity lens. I have to honor my biases. Do I agree with who I am all the time and the things I bring? No. There are a lot of things that I want to fix, and I feel like they are things that, you know, I could be a better instructor, I could be a better person, I could be, if I just improve. There's room for improvement in so many areas. But I know that I've grown a lot by affirming this every day. I say this, Monica, you have got to be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. You've got to be better today than you were yesterday. I mean, every day I want to get better. So I challenge myself to, you know, whatever my thing is that day. Maybe one thing is, well, this is a regular one for me because I love to talk, as you can tell. I enjoy talking to people. So one of the things is I challenge myself today, and I'll say, you will not speak for however many minutes. I'm going to give myself a challenge for 30 minutes today. I want you to make sure that you don't talk for 30 minutes while you are in a room with other people. Not when you're by yourself, because I'm not going to talk then anyway. So I try to challenge myself. That might be my challenge, because I know that the more I talk, the less I'm listening. And listening is such a critical skill in any area. So I honor my biases. I also honor my flaws and things that make me who I am. And then I use that to do the following. There's an activity. I would love it if you would participate. I'm going to give you all these are the little sheet protectors. There you go. You'll pass one back. Thank you. And I'll explain what you're going to do with them. I think that's enough for everybody. I also have some markers, and I'm known as the candy lady a little bit, so please share some treats as well. So I'm going to pass around two things, a box of markers, and please use the Sharpie so that they won't run. You want these to stay on the picture too. And then, of course, please have some treats. Absolutely, you gotta have some brain food, right? Okay, so I'll explain this while you're circulating all the materials. First off, your transparency. I know it's a little bit kind of foggy when you look through it, but if you held it up in front of you, can you pretty much see everybody in the room? Can you see okay? Hopefully everybody can see. Yeah. So we can see each other through it. It's not real clear, but you can see everybody, right? Awesome. Well, we're gonna do an activity here where I'm gonna ask you to write some things on here, on your transparency. And these are things that are characteristics about you personally. You can do this exercise with students in a math class, in any class if you wanted to. This is something that I feel like kind of sets the tone at the beginning of a semester or something. You could do it maybe midstream, but it's most effective if you do this at the beginning. So think about this. Maybe it's something you might want to try first day next semester if you're teaching. First thing is I pick topics that I want them to think about. So I would say, for me, when I think of Monica, how do I define myself? Who is Monica? And that could be in any way. So I want you to think of every possible thing that you feel like makes you who you are. So for example, who makes me Monica, or what makes me Monica? I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a Christian. These are my personal things that I value and they mean something to me. And it doesn't matter about anybody else. I don't care what other people think is important to them. Right now, this is all about you. So on your transparency, write, and if you can, it's great if you can put it in like a circular kind of thing. You can write words, you can draw pictures that represent who you are, whatever, but put at least 6 things, if you will, that define who you are. And then in the middle, write your name. Or you can draw your own picture of yourself, or whatever you want to be creative. But definitely 6 things that define who you are, and then your name in the middle. Give you a couple of things. Let everybody get a chance to get a marker. And candies too. I'll leave them up here if you want them. Did you need a marker? Yes. Is it not good? Some of them are dying on me.
So your whiteboard marker.
Oh, yeah, was there another Sharpie? I'm sorry. The Sharpies, if they're not writing well, then you can't see them. If they write okay, that's, yeah. Yours dried up too? Thank you. Just pass that over. Thank you. That you will not have to share. This is not something that you'll actually have to say aloud. This is really for you. But we're going to do something with the transparency. Anyone need more time? Okay. You will need a couple more seconds. Anybody? So hopefully you've had a chance to reflect a little bit about who you are as a person and what you value. It's okay if you didn't get all of it filled in. But what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is, of course, you can close the markers, put them down. I'm going to pick up the transparency. And earlier, I asked you to take the transparency before we wrote on it and make sure you can see through, see everybody. It's pretty clear. Now hold that up in front of you and try to see everybody. You can still see us pretty well. I mean, it's clear. But is your vision as clear as it was when there was nothing on there?
No.
No, obviously. You've got some things kind of covering up that space, especially right in the middle. I put your name, who you are at the core. You put that in the middle. And typically when we look at people and look at anything in life, we are looking through our lens and we're bringing into it all that stuff you put around there. We're bringing in who we are. That's exactly who we are. No matter how good, bad, indifferent, non-judgmentally, we are who we are. Unapologetically, that's who you are. And you should be, right? However, I want you to think about what that looks like in a position, in an instructional role, like the positions you're going to be in if you're not already. How many of you have taught for at least 5 years in some capacity? You've been in an instructional role for 5 years, okay? So, and others of you are about to start, so this is exciting. How many of you have taught for 10 years? Oh, so you got some veterans, okay. So we got 5, somewhere in between there for you probably, Dr. Beck, and then somewhere above 10, what's our number, our magic number?
More than 10.
So more than 10, stop counting, you're like me, right. So you have a lot of experience teaching. I would love to hear from you how you see yourself now after the experience versus when you first started teaching. First year teaching, first experience in an instructional role. How are you different? How are the experiences different, if you don't mind sharing? How you even facilitate a session, a learning session. Anything different? Maybe it's the same.
different.
How so?
Less sort of self-conscious.
More comfortable with what you're doing. You know your content better? Feel like you got better with what you know?
Some of the students who took my classes.
But you've done this a while, so you feel like you've gotten a better understanding of what it is you're teaching at this point?
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think I'm much more aware of making the classroom interactive now than I was when I started. When I started, I was much more kind of in the zone of, okay, here's the material, here's what you need to know, and now I'm more aware of kind of keeping engaged.
Do you feel like you understand what you're teaching better at this point?
I think to a certain extent, yeah. I think I have a better idea of I think I'm better at figuring out what they will find challenging.
So definitely better at your role as an instructor, at the pedagogy part of it.
Yeah, probably.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I say that because typically when you teach something, you do understand it better. And that's known. This is one of our, I guess one of our big skills and strategies in the Learning Center. We tell students, self-teach. Teach this to somebody else and you will understand it better. So I do know that's been evidenced or researched and it's evidence-based that you do learn and retain a much higher percentage of what you teach than what you just hear or see or whatever. So I know that you've probably grown that way. When you said, I now am more interested in making the classroom more interactive, I'm better at that, making it more interactive. When you start teaching, it's almost like self-preservation. I just want to survive and make sure I do my job and not lose it and make sure that I check all the boxes and I've covered all the material. It's a totally different experience than, you give yourself a few years. And it's not that you slight your responsibilities in any way, but you do see things different. It's not about protecting yourself. It's really about making sure that I'm as effective as possible for my students. Now, some people come out, guns blazing, they're ready, and they've got it all. They're just naturals at that, and they can do that. I wasn't that one. I felt like I was natural at being interpersonal and had pretty good relationship and rapport with students. But teaching is not that easy, and making sure they understand it in a way that they can learn it and retain it. So when you look through that lens and you say, I'm seeing them, you're seeing them the way you see things. And sometimes that clouded vision makes it hard for them to understand what we're trying to communicate. And so effective instruction really requires us to clean those filters. This is like a filter, and when you're looking through it, it's nothing wrong with seeing it through your lens because that's the only lens that you know. But it's never a bad idea to clean that off a little bit sometimes. Because you want to really be able to see them. How many times, and you don't have, this is rhetorical, but I want you to think about it. Those who have been in an instructional role, or even if you've been in a classroom setting, how many times has an instructor asked a question and you're sitting there saying, okay, I don't know what they're talking about, right? And then as the instructor, you ask it and everybody's like, and you're saying, come on, this is a pretty simple, straightforward question. But as the instructor, you're saying that because you've done this 8 zillion times. So yeah, it is straightforward to you. You know it, you get it. That's the first, second, third, I don't know when they've seen this. And these are typically freshmen, sophomores, juniors. First of all, they are going through the transition into adulthood. Who knows what's on their minds? Who knows what happened yesterday, last night, and what? So the reality is, it took me a while to really respect that and say, these babies really are clueless because they probably didn't do the work. Or they may have done it, but it's not sticking because they don't do it with the regularity that I do. It's like a foreign language, just like anything. You don't do it every single day, you don't practice. And it means a lot to us because we're passionate about the math. Everybody's not passionate about math. We talk about this, we have reading group in Learning Center. I'm like, oh Lord, it's the reading group. You gotta read. And that is not my passion at all. And so I push myself, thank you so much for coming. I push myself to try to do it, but it's a challenge. It really is a challenge for me to say, to even be motivated to sit down with the book. Because I'm wasting time in my opinion. I'm like, I could be doing stuff. I'm one of those who wants to be doing something else, But I do value and appreciate that moment of that time that you have to read it. I just haven't matured to the point where I appreciate it like I do some other things. So your students are gonna be the same. And we have to respect that. We can't see it through our lens. We have to be able to clean that and say, I see it through your lens. I understand. And being empathetic about that, we have to always try to consider these 3 goals as we plan lessons, as we execute them in the classroom setting. We've got to always try to improve our intergroup relations through self-regulation. And again, that's cleaning that filter. We talk about this in coaching models, where we say you've got to do a lot of self-managing, because in the moment you're listening to them, you're trying to help them, but you're also managing yourself, because you're human and you might have a distraction or something you're managing. And so in this role as an educator, we've got to be able to self-regulate. And that is a conscious effort to self-regulate. You have to really work at that. We encourage relationship building using instructional best practices. So like you said, being more interactive. Learning, just like the video said, should be an interactive experience. I should not be a sage on the stage. The learning is not about me, it's about you learning it. Because obviously I'm doing okay with it, and I'm sharing what I know so that you can understand it better for yourself. So you really want it to be an interactive experience as much as possible. Now, developing a compassionate classroom culture by changing this response to conflict and difference. Right now in our current climate nationally, globally, this is really important. Our campus is suffering right now from a lot of negative vibes and just, we know it's a product of the whole society, the bigger society. And I think all of you, I could say, don't want that, and you probably don't, you feel like, I hope, that you feel like everybody is equally important and valued and so forth. But that is just not what everybody else in the world feels. And we understand that right now we're in a place where these students are out there fighting these fights on campus, and they're bringing that in, they're bringing some rage, it's a lot of different things that are happening. And so that dynamic, that relationship between you and students, it is more important now than ever to really be compassionate and to be cognizant of that culture you're creating in your class. Whatever you're cultivating in that space, those individuals are receiving whatever you're putting out, and they're taking it with them, and they're saying, this is what I sense from this is what I'm taking away. And that affects their learning, because if they're getting that vibe that you don't care, you look at me like I'm not really worth it, or whatever, if it feels in any way from their perspective, again, we're not seeing it through ours. We know what we mean. We don't mean it maybe. And it may be one of those ouch, oops kind of experience. But the bottom line is you don't know it. But if you're looking through their lens, they're saying this person is a racist. This person is a sexist. This person is a whatever. And I hear these comments and don't necessarily know where they come from and don't necessarily think they're true. But for whatever reason, they feel that way. And they're validated. They have a right to feel what they feel. I don't know why. But if we can do our very best to be compassionate and always see, clean the filter, and see that whatever we feel or think is not necessarily what others do, and then just understanding that there's a lot that's happening in that space in 50 minutes or an hour, 15 minutes, that you may not even be attuned to. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what their day was like and what they brought in. So being just sensitive. Sometimes, I remember when I was an undergrad here and we were fighting for a freestanding Black Cultural Center, the Sung Hae Stone. We didn't have it at the time, but we were angry. So I would go to class, and I think I was okay. I was pretty mature, but I was still, early 20s, 19, 20. So there were some times that I would feel like whatever was going on campus, it was kind of transferred into the classroom, and I would say, oh no, he just saying that because I'm a Black female in the classroom. And I really felt it. I really did. And I was upset, so I would go in class and I was guarded. So now I'm not learning as much because I feel like you're targeting me, or maybe the way that when I raise my hand and ask a question, why are you skipping over me? What do you think, I'm stupid? I don't know the answer? I have some input. Even if it's wrong, I paid to be here. I have a right to ask this question. Why are you not acknowledging me? And there are some students who are invisible in the class because they refuse to raise their hand because they feel like if I do that, I'm gonna look dumb, or I'm gonna feel like, it's not fair. This person always calls on all the guys, never acknowledges the girls. This person never acknowledges the athletes, or whatever you think. Or this person comes in late all the time, so you assume they're just lazy and they don't care. You don't know what they're coming from. We have to be sensitive, and it takes time to develop that sensitivity. And I know there are some students who really just aren't doing what they're supposed to do, but we are at Carolina. These are very high achieving students. They probably really are trying to do what they're supposed to do. That's how they got here. So we're not talking about just any old students. These are high achieving students who really expect a lot from themselves. And in the Learning Center, we see a lot of that they don't communicate to you because they're not comfortable. They rather say, so we see it and we tell them, no, your instructors are there for you. Go to them one-on-one, because in a big setting, yeah, you really can't get that vibe from them. But I encourage you to try to exude that type of compassion and that kind of environment, that kind of culturally inclusive environment, so that students do sense that from you. They do feel like you value them, even if they don't get called on. It's just making them feel that, yeah, I am part of this community. And that's big, because otherwise they're really not going to get much out of their experience. The workshop references, I will make this available to you, by the way. Wesley, I'm just going to share it with you, and you can share it to whomever. But these are just some resources that come from the World of Difference, the Anti-Defamation League. All these are kind of old resources from whenever I was trained, but they've just been updated. This is the same information. The good stuff doesn't really change. But I encourage you to check out their current website. They have a plethora of resources, and this is just kind of a taste of some of the things that I was going to include today. Some of this I won't really get to, but I did already mention some vocabulary like bias and so forth. So there are some general terms in here, and oftentimes we really don't understand what they mean when we hear, oh, you're a racist. We just kind of have made our own